Good morning. We're here at the police headquarters in Royal Montserrat for an interview with the top brass of the Royal Montserrat Police Service. It's my understanding that this is the first in an ongoing series of interviews which may have been suspended some time ago. We hope that this will be a continuing public relations community outreach on behalf of the police. Shall we begin with an opening statement and identification of the officers at the table, please?
Good morning, listening public. My name is Steve Foster, Commissioner of Police, and I have here with me this morning Mr. Charles Thompson, he's the Deputy Commissioner of Police, and Mr. Bennett Kirwan, who is the Acting Superintendent of Police. We have today a press conference which will highlight some of our initiatives, past crime trend, and also we will take questions from the persons here. Part of our new initiative is to ensure that we have a greater community participation and greater community engagement, and that the public have a say in how we police the community. From that perspective, we will ensure that we engage the public at different forums, and we have started. In November of 2014, we had 4 town hall or community consultative group meetings, one with the Spanish community, second with the Haitian community, one with CARICOM, and the 4th meeting was with the expatriates. And as you will see, we have divided them into categories so that we could deal specifically with the needs of each community. We will also touch on vehicle licensing this morning. That's something which we may need to clear. And we'll also touch on the Daville operation, just briefly, because that have been ventilated enough, and I think just for some clarity, we presented a press statement already on that. So that's in brief my opening statement this morning.
Yes, good morning. My name is Charles Thompson, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Police. As Commissioner would have highlighted, this morning's press conference is one in a series which we intend to continue throughout 2015 as part of our community outreach initiative. And he would have looked at, give an overview of last year's activities for the Royal Montserrat Police Service and really set the tone for 2015 and the various activities which we are hoping to undertake to continue to serve Montserrat in our capacity of providing security. Thank you.
A very good morning. My name is Bennett Kirwan. I'm currently the Acting Superintendent of Police. This morning's press conference is part of our outreach to the public in terms of disseminating information, getting a feedback in terms of how we police Montserrat, how we can better able to serve the community, and at the same time engage the community as part of the Commissioner's plan for 2015. So let me say thanks for this opportunity for us to be able to give some feedback to the community as to what we as the police provide in terms of service.
Commissioner, there were some specifics that you wanted to address before we got to taking questions?
Yes, Mr. Jarvis, and I'll touch on a few of them. Greater community participation and greater community engagement. As highlighted before, we had a number of town hall meetings, and so far in 2015, there was, on January 20th, there was a meeting, a Tuesday coffee meeting at the governor's residence where we engaged some 95 persons to educate them on things which the police will be doing in 2015, brief them on crime trends, and help them to understand our role, our function, and our responsibilities. We have also attended a number of village meetings. We have attended meetings with the Daville Community Group. We have also attended meetings with the Lookout, and we must highlight here Mr. Sherwin Bazi, who is the president of the Lookout, and he is not 100% at this time. However, he have been an initiator in relation to community activities which involve the Lookout community group and the police. Some of the activities included painting of road signs, erection of traffic signs, mirrors, etc. from that community. So we must say a great thanks to him and the Lookout community for his help, and we also say wish him a speedy recovery as he goes through his medical challenges. In relation to crime, I must highlight here that there have been a decline overall in crime over the past 5 years. We have done the data for 2010 to 2014, and so far, crime trends, we have had a reduction in crime. Yes, there were some serious crimes in 2012, which we will always refer to as one of our challenging times. However, overall, crime is on the decline. We must also highlight here that in relation to major crime, we saw a 13% increase in the numbers in major crime. And in the area of drug arrests, there was over 300% increase, and that is one where we have focused more on drug interdiction since other areas of our, we have changed areas from time to time. So last year, we focused a lot on drug interdiction. So we had an increase in drug arrests, which carried up the crime stats. However, that does not say that more drugs is on the street. It just said that we had a different approach, or we used a different approach that time around. As a result, we increased on those numbers. So that does not say more drugs is on the street. In relation to burglary, I must highlight here also that burglaries are on the decline. In 2013, we had 32 burglaries reported. In 2014, we only had 14. And yes, it might be 14 too much, but that shows that we are trying to keep Montserrat as safe as possible, and thanks to the public too for their participation in that. What we have also done in relation to burglaries and property crimes, we are looking at how we could involve and engage the public more by using things like neighborhood watches, property marking scheme, and let persons look out for each other. If that happens, we could reduce even crimes, property crimes, even more. And we are suggesting that persons who are leaving their property, especially those persons in the Old Town district area, to inform the police, so that we will make a list of those persons who are on island and not on island, so that we will know if by chance persons are in those areas, or there's lights in the houses in the night, or something happens, that we will know that the owners are not around, so that means a crime may or may not have occurred. Secondly, what we are doing as part of that initiative also is that we have designated each police officer with a designated beat or geographical area. That means persons will be visiting and interacting with members of the public, and the police visibility will be much higher in the community, even though the numbers have not increased. So those are some of the things which we are looking at. I must touch here briefly on an operation which we carried out not too long ago in the Dave Hill area, which drew a lot of attention from different circles. I would like to highlight here that there are three arms of government. There's the executive, the judiciary, and the administrative. And we all have our role and function. And I'll just leave it right at that point. I wouldn't stretch it any further. In relation to the vehicles licensing, there is a new vehicles licensing process which will be implemented and is ongoing at this time, because it started the 1st of February. The implementation should have been the 1st of February. There's some questions as to whether or not the police who are engaged at any stage of this initiative. And I will highlight here, the police, we were engaged from the very onset of this new initiative. The challenge is whether or not it was discussed, or I should not say whether or not it was discussed, statements made by officers at the lower rank. I take full responsibility if that communication did not reach down to the level which it should have been. But we were involved from the beginning, both the Transport Board, and most of the ideas, suggestions, and initiatives came out of meetings of the Transport Board, which were held several years ago. It just came to reality that the time is now that these things should be implemented. And we would not want to get into the rambling as to how it is done and how it's not done, because as I highlighted in my previous remarks about the David operation, there are different sectors of government, and we all deal with different things in our own area of expertise. So as a result, we will enforce any laws which are put in place, and that is our role or function. My role as the Commissioner of Police, when there's new laws in place, is to ensure that that information transcends down to the officers patrolling the beat and who should be enforcing it. So that is my role, my responsibility, and we will ensure that each officer, whichever law, whether it be traffic, domestic violence, or any laws, that those laws will be transcended down to each and every officer who will have to enforce it on the ground.
The initial meeting that you've had with the various communities and community organizations that you've spoken with thus far, what are some of the key issues and concerns that they've brought to your attention?
There are different communities, and immigration, which immigration may have come out as one of the challenges which some persons have, and I'll just use that as one. Or challenge, though, in the Spanish community, and we raise the Spanish community as one aspect, that there are many offenses which happen within the Spanish community, which at the end of our investigations, that they may say that they do not want any further court actions. One, we have in some challenges with language barrier, and the organization have done some work in itself that we have invested in trying to help officers to have a better understanding of the Spanish language by giving them conversational Spanish, and that is ongoing. So that in itself causes a little challenge, the language barrier. Secondly, after we have invested lots of resources, because we have to pay interpreters, we have to do other things in relation to when you're dealing with challenges of the language issues, and it costs very much to investigate cases where there's issues with language. So whether it's the Haitian community, Spanish, French, Creole, or whatever, we do have to pay interpreters. And what we are looking at, we have suggested to them that they need to address their matters appropriately well, so that once the police gets involved, we may have to now resort to using a part of the law which says that if the police carries out investigation, and it's not quoted word for word, if the police carries out investigation and at the end of the day you do not want the police to continue, we could also bring a charge against you for wasting police time, because there's lots of resources involved. And it's actually a penalty for that. And those are some of the things which we are looking at. In relation to their challenges, though, it's mostly immigration related in relation to non-nationals. In relation to the expatriate community, is whether or not we are giving their needs high priority and not priority over others. It's just that, so that's one of the reasons for the greater community engagement, where we have assigned officers to different community, because they're saying, well, we are not seeing police officers. So if you're not seeing police officers, why are you not seeing police officers? So as a result, we have designated each officer to each area. So you should be seeing police officers in the north, they should be seen in the south, they should be seen in Old Town, you should be seen at Lookout. So Montserrat should be fully covered, and we are not giving any community any preferential treatment over any others.
If I may just follow up on that, and the response from the Commissioner, that since we would have had that last meeting in January, we have been monitoring the situation very closely, and we've gotten very favorable feedback that persons are saying that they now see officers even more frequently in their district. So at least that's a start, and it goes to show that once we would have given an undertaking that we are going to be doing something, that we're going to make all possible efforts to get it done.
Good morning, Bennett Roach. I'm a little disturbed that I missed part of your press conference. I don't know who's responsible for that, but I know it's not me. You talked about when you referred to the Davy Hill incident, you mentioned that there were 3 arms of whatever in Montserrat. You mentioned the executive, etc. So under which arm does the police fall?
The police are part of the judiciary section. We enforce law and order and ensure that whatever the executive puts in place, whether they pass laws or whatever, that we enforce the laws of the day. And
what I was trying to get at, under which arm does the police fall? Not the one that it works under, but under which one it falls. In other words, which one of those arms control the police?
They are separate and distinct, in any democracy, Mr. Roach, you should know that all the arms are separate and distinct, and they're not controlled by any one arm. We're all working together for the good governance of Montserrat. And I think we should more stick to the actual going into crime and the trends, and to keep away from the lines of the governmental structure of the democratic system.
You raised it, Commissioner, and it's not a matter of what I know or should know, it's what I want the people out there to know. So it's nothing about me. So I hope that is clear.
It is clear.
And as I said, what I'm trying to get at, it's not. You see, you raised it, and I'm not sure that I.
Mr. Roach, let me make it clear. The police are independent, and the police should be professionals and should carry out their function independently of any political or any external directive or interference. And I would like to make that very clear. And if that's what you're trying to pull, I do not have any political inclination, and I do not have any commitment to any political party or system other than providing professional service to any government of the day and the party in power at the time. And the laws of Montserrat, we carry them out.
You see, Commissioner, I hear that speech and not have no interest at all in that speech. You are alluding to me going somewhere. The only place I'm going to is that you raised the fact about there are these 3 arms of government. And I'm asking you, under which arm who controls the police is independent. So is everybody else. Everybody else, they're all independent. All I'm asking, you don't act on your own. There is somebody who says who will be the commissioner, who will be the deputy, etc., etc., etc. And one of those arms has that responsibility. So to whom are you responsible? To whom are you accountable?
Mr. Roach, the Constitution highlights the role and function. The Constitution of Montserrat highlights who's appointed and who's the roles and function. The governor is responsible for internal security, and the office of the commissioner reports to the governor in relation to all matters of national security.
Thank you very much. I think we finally got there. So with relation to the Davy Hill situation, we probably won't go back to the comments I've made regarding that incident, which actually hasn't been published yet. And so I think there are issues that we should deal with, not in a public situation where that is concerned, but rather on a media to police to work out arrangements. But was that the first operation that was conducted in Davy Hill?
That is not the first operation that was conducted in Davy Hill, and it may be the first operation conducted for 2015, and there are a number of operations that would have been conducted in Davy Hill, and there's a number of operations that would have been conducted throughout Montserrat. And the police will operate in all areas of Montserrat, and there will be no areas of Montserrat which will be a no-go for police. If we have intelligence and or information that leads us to carry out operations in any sector of Montserrat, we will carry out operations in any sector of Montserrat. So that is how we carry out operation. Operation is based on intelligence, and if we have intelligence that something is happening in an area of Montserrat which is illegal and which must be addressed, we will address any sector of Montserrat.
The person responsible, to wit the governor, for the police mentioned the lack of success, if you like, of the operation, in that no one was arrested, nothing was found, etc., etc. And so my question is, and I'm saying he raised it, or through you, I think. My question for you is this: in these previous raids and so on, and let's stay with Davy Hill. I think everybody out there expects that the police must be able to carry out anything in our land space, sea space, air space, wherever. What has been the success of previous raids in terms of, yes, if you will tell me, what's been the success of previous raids in the area, in that particular area?
We have carried out a number of operations in areas, Carlsbad, Davy Hill area, and they have been successful. We have made arrests, we have seized drugs, we have taken persons, drugs off the street, and we will continue to do that. Not every operation may come out with an arrest, because we are working on intelligence, and it's not all the time that information or intelligence would be 100% correct. And or persons may be forewarned that the police are on their way and they may have changed operations. So they are gathering intelligence and we are gathering intelligence. So if their intelligence gives them ideas, then they operate on their intelligence and we operate on ours.
Well,
Just before you go on, Mr. Chief, just as a follow-up, I would like to highlight here that the success of an operation doesn't necessarily hinges on an arrest, because during an operation there are lots of observations that can be made, there are lots of intelligence, information and intelligence that can also be gathered. So that would lead to futuristic plans and also operations. So we really should not be looking at that. That's not how we look at it from our training. That's not how we are trained. And of course, it has proven successful in the past where we would have gone out. Yes, we would have done operations. It may not necessarily lead to an arrest of a person or persons or seizing of illegal drugs. But by virtue of the fact that we would have gathered additional information and intelligence, in that light, it is a success for us.
Fair enough, and I hope that I said that the commissioner did raise one part which I hope would and what I would have asked, but again, I think it's not for this type of thing. I think it's, and not for something that we would look like we are debating on this, because that's not what I'm doing at all. I'm trying to find out, but I think you sort of responded maybe to my next question, in that you would have learned things from that raid, and that's really what I'm hoping for.
James White, Radio Montserrat. Deputy Commissioner, you mentioned something that I really wanted to get a comment from you on, and of course, Commissioner as well. And you spoke to the fact that during an operation that some certain things might evolve on the ground. And intelligence-led, I note, just going back to the Davy Hill operation, where there were some humanitarian issues on the ground which we thought were not taken into consideration being on the scene. And I just hope that, that will help in your planning, to further mitigate certain things on the ground. If you want to comment further on that, I have another question concerning communication, police, media, general public. So first, I would like you to give a comment on the fact that the situation, even though it's intelligence-led, evolves on the ground.
Okay, you specifically raised the point of humanitarian aspect of what may have transpired there and then. Let me say that in planning an operation, and I think this is probably going to help to give some perspective as to exactly what you're asking. There are lots of things that we take into account. The operation itself is not planned when the officers get there. And as a result, we would have had to go through and would have done a lot of analysis. And that would also include risk assessment. Risk assessment for the persons on the ground, risk assessments for the officers who are going in, because of course we would have had incidents in the past where officers were injured. We would have had incidents where things may have gotten out of control, and as a result, it is our responsibility to ensure that whenever we're doing these operations, we take all these things into account. I can tell you that these operations are very detailed. They are guided by what we call operational orders. And as you would have realized, it is always going to be evolving. There's a critical point that was raised earlier on, and I just want to touch on it, that intelligence is perishable. It only has it has a shelf life. And as a result, you are likely to find that the intel that you get this morning will change by this afternoon, or change within a minute's time. And as a result, that may very well impact one way or the other on your overall operation. So I just wanted to make that point to say that one, we do what we call a risk assessment, and we have to take into consideration all the issues that you would have raised, the humanitarian side, the impact on communities, the impact on individuals, the impact on officers who are actually going to be on the ground. And also, and very critical too as well, James, the impact on the organization, because we have to ensure that when we go out and we do something, it has to be done professionally, and that's what we strive for. I want to make this point that going into 2015, one of the key things that as senior managers we've sat down and we've discussed, and is moving forward with the idea or the understanding that we're going to be looking at ways of constantly improving on the service that we're going to be delivering to Montserrat. That's what we're driving at, constantly improving. So the point that you would have raised, again, is something that we'll take on board and would continue to look at, even though we're doing it, and looking at ways and means of improving.
Yeah, not to prolong it though, but in terms of that particular operation, were you satisfied that that this was done, they were taken into consideration, all the elements that you referred to?
Again, let me say that in in dealing with an operation, you cannot predict everything that is going to happen. When you get on the scene, things may change. As I've hinted earlier on, your intel that you're working with is perishable. Your assessment is based on what you have at the time that you're dealing with, and that's what you can deal with. When you get there, things may change, and as a result, you may have to, and in all operations, you have to provide for some level of flexibility to make that change on the ground. Now,
The question is, Deputy, is that
yes.
Were you satisfied that most of the elements that you
Yes,
referred to?
I am. I must say I am satisfied.
Okay. Now, moving on to the next question that I hinted to earlier in terms of communication. And in years gone by, we used to have a very good relationship with the police. And for whatever reason or reasons, that has been eroded. I don't know why. There is now a gap where we as the media at times meet up with resistance from some officers. And the question that I want to ask you is, if there is something that will be put in place to ensure that the interface between the police and the media in particular and the public in general is enhanced.
This morning is actually one of those such initiatives that we are engaging both the media and we are engaging the community, and we will be interacting with you, the media and the public, on a more frequent basis.
Commissioner, I appreciate that brief answer. I'm talking about where you are concerned, Deputy is concerned, and Mr. Kirwan. You know, we do not generally have a problem, right? But we're talking about officers, day-to-day officers that we meet on the beat and wherever that what is being done to ensure that these officers, their communication is improved with the media and the public in general.
And just before you came in, James, I alluded to Mr. Jarvis that we are going to look at media training, some additional media training for officers. And maybe he thought I was joking when I said it, but that was factual, that we are looking at how we are developing the skills at all levels. And I know we have recruits in training and they should be getting public speaking and just a brief introduction to the media. And also the senior officers should get a refresher. We have done that before and things have changed. Persons have left the organization and we now need to refresh that again. So that's something which we are looking at. And Mr. Kirwan, the person in charge of operation, he's listening to me right now. So he knows what he has to do in relation to putting those things, putting the machinery in place for us to get that done. I must highlight here though, when we are in actual operations, there's times that we may not actually say exactly what we are doing on operations, and you may be referred to the PRO from time to time. And the Deputy Commissioner of Police, by virtue of his office, is the PRO of the organization. However, we are considering whether or not we have another designated person lower down the ranks who could interact and interface with the media on a more frequent basis.
All right, Dwight Thompson from the Reporter. I had a question. Deputy Commissioner highlighted that there are operational procedures when conducting an operation. As a part of that procedure, as a part of the whole operation, is there someone who is designated to speak with the media during an operation? I really want to find out that particular. I have another question.
In every operation, there's a very senior officer on the ground. There's a branch commander, if you call it that. And just recently, in the recent operation, Mr. Williams was the branch commander on the ground. That's Inspector Albert Williams. And I know he was approached by the media. He did answer the questions, maybe not in the way persons would have liked them to answer them, but he was the officer on the ground, and he would have maybe referred officers to about dealing with the operation command, and the operation commander was not unseen, meaning there's a branch commander who runs the unseen operation, because there's levels of operational command structure which we have. And overall, Mr. Kirwan, who is the current superintendent of operations, he is responsible and is the silver commander for all police operations unless somebody else is designated as the silver commander for operations. And he is the one who may or may not interact with the press, and not the branch commander who is actually doing his risk assessment, his evaluation of things going on the ground. So at that time, that person would not be able to be interacting fully with the press while they're actually managing an ongoing operation.
All right, thank you for your response, Mr. Commissioner, but I was one of the individuals that interviewed the branch commander on the ground, and no information whatsoever was forthcoming, none whatsoever. As a matter of fact, when I asked a question, and I remember vividly the question, I asked simply, what prompted this operation? He said to me that he's not answering any further questions. Now, for me, I consider it to be a disrespect to the media, because if an operation is taking place in a particular area, and persons from the media houses on island is asking questions about the operation, even if details cannot be given, necessary details or integral details, but at least we have the right to know exactly what is happening, what prompted that, etc. Right? Further, and I want to make this statement. It's not a question; it's a statement. I have looked over, and I was just looking for it. The press release released from the police on the Deville operation, and to my surprise, only 2 paragraphs out of a 2-page document speak or directly spoke to the operation, and that and much can be compared.
Can be.
Cannot be compared. I mean that there was little or no information whatsoever.
Commissioner, in the release, it referred to the stats from 2010. You talked about the intelligence, but there was nothing in there that talked about the intelligence for that operation. As a matter of fact, it spoke to intelligence from 2010, and by your own recent release regarding the statistics, it said while we've made more drug arrests, and you explained it a while ago, there has been, it doesn't mean that there is more activity on the ground. Which, what I'm really saying is the release, one has to be careful, because the release kind of contradicts what is being said now, so to speak, as to the intelligence, as to the reason going back to all the way to 2010.
Mr. Roach, we have done a 5-year data analysis, and I highlighted that we have looked at 2010 to 2014, and that crime is on the decline overall over those years. And I've highlighted that we had 31 drug arrests as compared to 13 in the period 2013. And we have increased our action against illicit drugs on Montserrat, and we will continue to increase our actions against illicit drugs on Montserrat, and we will continue to carry out more operations once intelligence provide that basis for us to carry out operations. As highlighted by the Deputy Commissioner of Police, intelligence or information have a very short shelf life sometimes. You get it now, it's hot. By the time you get your team together to act on that, things could have changed. And That's the world which we work in, and the constant in our environment is that the circumstances could change. We must ensure that we carry out all our operations appropriately well, professionally, and with the public in mind so that all of their needs will be met. We would not satisfy each person or every individual at every time, but we must ensure that we mitigate over all of those situations to ensure we carry out our functions appropriately well.
Just before you continue, Mr. Roach, in addressing your question or your submission, when operations are carried out and you have officers on the ground, and this is going back to the Daville situation, officers who are assigned on the ground have particular roles that they have to ensure that they engage themselves in fully. Yes, you may have approached the officer to give you some update as to what is transpiring. At that time, he may not have been in a position to give you a response. Essentially, he was the commander, and his role at that time was to ensure that the operations were carried out safely and that the job at hand is carried out efficiently. In relation to the community throughout Montserrat, I think we sometimes overlook that the main essence is for the safety and the security of residents. They are persons who would engage in activities which are against the law. It is the police duty to ensure that they address these issues. The paramount point that we should note is for the safety of residents, safety and security of residents. It therefore means where issues begin to spring up that essentially would cause residents to be disturbed, that would impact on the peace of the community, then essentially these are things that we have to address. The fact that we had to mount an operation, yes, it was led based on information, based on intelligence. We have to do what is necessary to ensure that the safety, the peace of communities is at all times maintained.
Enforcement of laws. It's the duty of the police to enforce laws. And Commissioner, you actually referred to new laws, especially when they come into force. Whose duty it is? So the police gets informed about new laws and they enforce these new laws. How is that transferred to the public? How is that information transferred to the public? In other words, it is one thing for new laws to be made and the police to get these new laws. How is that transferred to the public? Notice, I'm not saying that it is your duty. I'm asking you how it's done.
You preempt the answer, Mr. Roach, because exactly I'm going to do that's not the role and function of the police. The role and function of the Office of the Commissioner is to ensure that any law which comes into effect is properly circulated within the organization, that the officers will carry out their role and function. It's the role of the lawmakers to ensure that the laws, any new laws, is properly publicized, and there's ways of getting it publicized through whether gazettes, radios, and whatever, to the public so that the public themselves will have a general understanding or full understanding of any new laws that are in place.
Do you see any benefit that you now should be concerned that that is done?
I'm not sure where the question is leading, but I'm highlighting that I am ensuring that the officers under my command are properly educated on any new laws that are in place so that we will be able to effectively enforce those laws.
All right, where I was going, Commissioner, is the benefit to the police force, to your force, to you, that the public is aware of these laws. Doesn't it make your life easier if when you go out there, somebody says, "What are you talking about? What are you doing here? I don't know anything about it." So do you feel any responsibility to ensure that the public is also informed about this?
It's our responsibility that the public is informed, all of us. As a result, that's one of the reasons for our Drive Time radio program. That's a public education program. Lots of things come out, whether it's sometimes it's not related to Drive Time, but it's education also for the police, because persons use that also as a way of informing the police of some of the different things which are not Drive Time related, which we need to do. And that also may be one of the reasons why we may need to introduce or reintroduce On the Beat for Safer Street, which was one of our weekly police program, which was separate and distinct from the Drive Time program, to actually get information from the public and also educate the public from time to time. So that's one of the initiatives which we would consider bringing back full time.
And would that include the forum that I think the deputy is probably responsible for, what we call that, the community, what's the organization where you meet with the
Community Consultative Group.
The consultative group. It's been quiet for all of last year. Are you planning to include that and bring that back on board?
Yes, we will bring that back on board. The president is still available. We'll bring that back up and have it running.
And finally, on your administration, you referred to the problem of communicating with, especially in your investigations, with regards to the non-English people. But you do have Spanish people on your force, don't you? Spanish on the staff.
We have one Spanish-speaking national on staff. However, even you're doing full-time investigation, for fairness, transparency, you may need to employ an interpreter, because we wouldn't want persons to say, especially if they are victims. When I say victims, you are the offender, and the police dealing with your matter, and you're going to say you said AB, and the police said you said BC. And we have to make sure that it's transparent, so we do hire an independent person to interpret on behalf of the police, and the court itself uses an independent interpreter to interpret on behalf of the court when we take matters before the court. So even though, yes, we have Spanish-speaking persons, it's to help us in understanding what was said, or to help us to investigate the matter at minimal cost, if you call it that. However, for transparency, we must have independent persons doing the interpretation and assisting with the investigations.
Mr. Commissioner, let's just look a little bit at security, general security. And I recall Lieutenant Commander Stephen Banfield of HMS 7 mentioning about some training that he would undertake with the Royal Montserrat Police Service on security issues, and where possible, if there are any areas that he feels that need some support, that he would make recommendations. Can you give us some feedback on that particular training?
I'll refer to Mr. Thompson.
Okay.
Yes, a lot of it, but I can't go into details in terms of what was actually said. But I can say that the discourse with the personnel from HMS 7 and the Royal Montserrat Police Service, we found it to be very useful. We were able to look at some additional initiatives and some areas where we can benefit, and of course, in conjunction with the vessel. So I must say, from a holistic point of view, the discussions were very useful, and it will go a long way in helping us to charter new avenues in terms of how we can look at security in Montserrat.
I think during the discussion, the whole area of the unsafe zone,
yes,
came up for questioning on the fact that that area is very porous.
Right.
And a lot of illegal activities go on in that area. And what can be done from your perspective to improve security in that area?
But first of all, we have been doing quite a lot with the limited resources that we have. I must say that one of the challenges, and I think it's a known fact that we have very limited resources to police our borders, and that's something that we've made quite clearly to our benefactors and the powers that be, that there is a need for us to do so. And I'm really happy that you would have gone into that area. I'm very mindful as well of time, because we can spend the entire day just even talking about resources and actually policing Montserrat. I raised that because very recently I happened to have attended a meeting. Commissioner was asked me to attend a meeting, and it was a meeting that brought together intelligence heads and commissioners from across the region. And the reports that we're getting is that there are cause for concerns when it comes to security across the entire region. We look at the increase in murders. We look at the fact that, as a matter of fact, the information is that there's 75% of all murders committed across the region, they are gun-related. What that is saying is that there seems to be a proliferation of firearms across the region. They have seen a significant increase in cocaine seizures in the waters of the Caribbean. And what would have triggered that? I must say that was predicted. And what would have triggered that is that the transshipment of drugs from South America up to North America and further afield would have predominantly gone through Central America. Now there has been an increase in security across the Mexican border, and as a result there has to be an alternative route of getting it there. It therefore means that the islands throughout the region, which are, because of their closeness, because of easy access, would have now been experiencing an increase in the activities of drug transshipment across the region. We also looked at, strange enough, terrorist activities. Yes, we may say that we're in the region. We would have heard a lot that is happening in the Middle East. And the truth is that there are persons who are leaving the region to go to help, to assist, to fight in ISIS. There's also evidence of persons of interest who are leaving those places to do their recruitment, and there are persons who are traveling throughout the region. And as a result, we have to look holistically as to what we're offering and what we're doing. And we cannot fool ourselves by saying it is always going to be that way. We can just look at our neighbors and see the extent to which crime is impacting on those our fellow brothers and sisters nearby. And as the old people would say, when your neighbor's house is on fire, you have to wet yours. So it is a cause for concern. We're not saying this because we want to scare people. We're saying this because it is a fact. And I say all that to say, we in Montserrat, we are accustomed to a particular level of security. The responsibility to secure Montserrat is all of us. It's not solely with the police. And we're saying here and now that if we do not take charge of what is happening, and I'm not saying just the police, if we do not take charge of what is happening, no, Montserrat is going to suffer just like the others. They're just going to suffer just like the others. And the big question is, are we prepared to get down to that level?
In fact, yes, Commissioner, go on.
Just before you go on, man, I come straight back at home and you ask in relation to how are we dealing with issues of, say, the unsafe zone and some of the activities that are going on. We just had a budget meeting with DFID, and we highlighted the fact for the need for resources, additional resources. We highlighted the Shamrock, that's the vessel we have, the capability or non-capability of Shamrock to satisfy the security needs or border security. We highlighted the needs for technical surveillance. where we are looking at closed circuit TV or cameras remotely situated in the unsafe zone that will help us to police that area, and that will lead to intelligence-led policing instead of just having people going out and patrolling with no actual idea as to what they're doing. And that brings us all the way back around in full circle to why we carry out operations. It's based on intelligence. And all the intelligence we are getting is that drugs are being transshipped either in or through Montserrat. There's evidence that persons, even from Montserrat, leave Montserrat and are arrested in the UK, arrested in the US, arrested in Jamaica, because they are carrying out illegal activity, and some are based right out of Montserrat. As a result, we have to work on the intelligence we have. And we come right around in full circle to say the success of an operation is not whether or not you arrested somebody, is whether or not you gain some knowledge which could help you to ensure that later on that all other operation is based on appropriate intelligence, all the risks, threats, and the analysis is done so that we would ensure that the public is happy, the public is safe, and that we maintain the peace, tranquility, and the safety of this lovely island which we all cherish and don't want to depart from. And that's how I'm trying to round it up. Yes, Mr.
Yes,
we just have a few more minutes. I have
Yes,
another
thank you.
video
Thank you very much for that. Because that is something that I wanted to address. The perception of Montserrat, but we just heard the concerns raised regarding particularly the unsafe zone. Right, first of two questions. How vulnerable then do you think that makes Montserrat, and how urgent is the need for us to have the assistance, support, etc., that we need to ensure that that vulnerability is addressed?
Montserrat is very, very vulnerable. Our border is so open and porous. Remember, we have an open port in Plymouth that any large vessel could come up to, and we are not watching it 24/7. So that's a challenge in itself. And how urgent is the need? It's past critical. It is now past critical. We are now 20 years out of Plymouth. We are now 20 years asking similar questions. And the need to ensure that national security is given priority is way beyond the critical stage. And I think we are at a stage, if we don't, that persons will be able to do almost anything they need in Montserrat. We had we had incidents where persons from Antigua were just smuggled in here. We had one person who committed double murder in Antigua. We found him here on Montserrat. We transported him back to Antigua. The same time we did find that person, we found two other persons who we didn't even know were on Montserrat. And all three persons were smuggled into Montserrat to hide them from the Antiguan authority. The good thing, again, thanks to the public, we are a small-knit community, and the public provided the information and the intelligence to say, there are some strangers here that needs to go back where they're from. And that was done. So the community, we must say thanks. The community have been working with us. Yes, there's times we may carry out operations, and it's only maybe 1% or less than 1% of the community causes the challenges which we are facing. 99.99% of the community are law-abiding and wants to see Montserrat as a safe community. There are one or two who may want different ways of doing things, and we have to also address those persons who would like to see different things. So once the laws of Montserrat guides us in one direction, we will enforce those laws, and until they are changed, we'll walk down that line.
Okay, thank you very much. My final question, at the outset you mentioned that major crime is down 30%. Given that there's this perception that Montserrat is the place that you can leave your windows open, you can leave your car unlocked, there's general peace and quiet, but also taking into consideration what was just mentioned before following the meeting that you attended, and also the situations that we see happening in neighboring islands, how urgent is the need for us to preserve, even if it is still a perception, that Montserrat is still this friendly, open place with security that you can leave your cars open, you can leave your homes open, or is there a threat to that at the moment?
Mike, I wouldn't say it's a major threat to the way we see life. However, if we do not, as a full community, take community action for our own national security, we may degenerate. We still could leave our doors open, we still could leave our windows open, and we still could leave the keys in the cars. And for security reasons and your own personal security, I wouldn't advise you to do it continuously. But most of us still do that. And it's a peaceful and tranquil environment which all of us come to love and come to want to be around. And if we do our little part by ensuring that if we see something, we report it to the police, and or we ensure that our own environment is secured, we would help to keep Montserrat the safe community that it is and will always want to be. I tell my officers from time to time I have a countdown as to when I plan to leave. And I want to go up Judy Peace, I don't have a fence, and I still want to don't have a fence when I leave here. And that's the Montserrat I want to see. I know I go down by Mr. Roach and I just walk in his yard, he don't have a fence. And we must continue to be able to do that. And don't expect that somebody is coming to do us something. So those are some of the things. And Montserrat is safe. We'll still say it's still safe. It's a place where we want to attract tourists. It's a place where investors could come once the other things are right and be happy to invest, and tourists could relax.
The costs you talked about, and you quite rightly earlier had referenced the fact that you are within the judiciary. But when you're talking about your costs and so on, and the need for resources, the judiciary, the UK government, has specifically stressed their interest in upgrading, doing everything possible, because within the judiciary falls our security and so on. And so with the governor being the person in charge, I really don't understand that you should have any difficulty in tapping the resources. Maybe DFID is not the people you should be talking to, but your administrators, because of this concern that is there for the judiciary and how it functions, I'm wondering, is it that maybe we are tapping or saying the wrong things or talking to the wrong people? What do you think, sir?
I must highlight here in our budget discussions, both this year and in some of the past, and this year specifically, I know the governor himself has injected himself into the needs of the police and have highlighted to DFID when we were making our presentation about how critical the police needs are, to include resourcing of vessels, surveillance equipment, and so on. So I know that he himself is putting the office of the governor as the head of the police service to highlight that the police needs are just as critical and maybe more critical and important than some of the other needs which have been highlighted. And I've sat in meetings with him when he himself makes presentations on behalf of the organization.